Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you for watching. In this work, the Quran will prove the existence of God for those who reflect. And this is how. In step 1 of the proof, evidence of correlation and design, we begin with the 3 extraordinary chapters of the Quran that deviate from the standard norm. These chapters are chapter 1, chapter 9, and chapter 27. Chapter 27 has 2 Bismillahs. This is in contrast to the standard norm of the Quran that is 1 Bismillah per chapter. Chapter 27 is the only chapter with this extraordinary property out of the 114 chapters of the book. In chapter 27, the first 29 verses are unique and distinct because the first 29 verses are between the ordinary Bismillah of the chapter, that's in its beginning, and the verse of the extraordinary Bismillah, and this is self-evident. Chapter 9 does not have the Bismillah. Chapter 9 is the only chapter with this property. Similar to chapter 27, the first 29 verses of chapter 9 are distinct and self-evident when we read the chapter and pay attention. Our last discussion was about chapter 9 and chapter 27 and their complementary relationships, including their first 29 verses and their mathematical structures. In chapter 1, the Bismillah is the first verse. This is in contrast to the standard norm of the Quran for the beginning Bismillahs, and chapter 1 is the only chapter with this property. Chapter 1 is composed of the first 29 words of the Quran. The main points of the first step are the following. The 3 chapters are in deviation from the standard norm of the book and the Bismillah. This is self-evident. The 3 chapters highlight the significance of number 29. This is also self-evident. And the correlation between the 3 chapters are 3/3, which is 100%. Indeed, from the first verse of chapter 1, which is the first extraordinary chapter, to the last verse of chapter 27, which is the last chapter of the 3 extraordinary chapters, the 3,252 verses of the 27 chapters, and their reverse number, which is 2,523, clearly, elegantly, and miraculously highlight the significance of number 29. Here is the proof. The reverse number of the 3252 verses of the 27 chapters, which is 2523, is equal to 29 squared plus 29 squared plus 29 squared, and we write them as 3 29s throughout this discussion for reasons. And the number of verses of the 27 chapters themselves, the 3252 verses, are equal to 27 squared plus 29 squared plus 29 squared plus 29 squared. And sum of the 3252 verses and the reverse number 2523 is equal to 5775. That is the reflection symmetry of number 57, which is the foundation of the next 8 steps of the proof of the existence of God in this discussion. The reflection symmetry of number 57 that we have from 5775 highlights the significance of chapter 57 of the Quran, plus the following. Number 29 and chapter 57 of the Quran are related and complementary. We present the proof in steps 3 to 10. The midpoint of the Quran in terms of chapters, which is at the end of the first 57 chapters, and the midpoint in terms of verses, that is at the end of the first 3118 verses, are related and complementary. Step 8 and step 10 to step 10. And the Quran and the counting numbers are divine, which is from step 1 to step 10. And here is the proof. Step 3. Number 29 and chapter 57 are complementary. And chapter 57, as the first evidence, has exactly 29 verses. Step 4. Number 29 and chapter 57 are complementary, and chapter 57 has exactly 29 verses. And sum of the chapter verses of the Quran from chapter 1 to 57 is 5104, which is equal to 176 times 29 verses. Number 29 and chapter 57 are complementary, Chapter 57 has exactly 29 verses, and sum of the chapter verses from chapter 1 to 57 is 176 times 29. And here the sum of the chapter numbers from chapter 1 to 57 is equal to 1653, which is equal to 57 times 29 verses. The next two steps of this work are built on the foundation of this equation of 1653 equals 57 times 29. Step 6. Number 29 and chapter 57 are complementary, and sum of the chapter numbers from 1 to 57 is 1653 equal to 57 times 29. And from chapter 48 to chapter 114 there are also exactly 1653 verses. And chapter 48 has exactly 29 verses. And here, miraculously, the sum of the chapter numbers that begin with chapter 48 and ends right before chapter 57 is equal to the sum of the cubes of the two digits of chapter 57. That are the cube of 5 and the cube of 7. This is a sign that we are on the right path. Step 7. Number 29 and chapter 57 are complementary, and chapter 48 has exactly 29 verses. This equation of the sum of the chapter verses from chapter 48 to chapter 114 equals to 1653 is from step 6. And the sum of the chapter numbers from chapter 48 to chapter 114 is equal to 5427, which is equal to 67 times 81, two significant number, where 67 is the number of chapters from 48 to 114, and 81 is the midpoint of the 67 chapters. And here chapter 81 also has exactly 29 verses. The two equations of the number of verses of the first 27 chapters and their reverse number pointing to the significance of number 29 and 57 are from step 2. But we also see that sum of the chapter numbers after chapter 27 to chapter 114 is 6177, which is equal to 71 times 87. And number 87 is equal to 29 plus 29 plus 29. In addition, we see that the number of chapters after chapter 27 are also exactly 87 chapters that are again equal to 29 plus 29 plus 29. Number 29 and 57 are complementary. And after chapter 27, there are exactly 87 chapters that are equal to 29 plus 29 plus 29. Indeed, within the last 87 chapters of the Quran and in relation to chapter 57, there are exactly 3 chapters with exactly 29 verses each. They are the only chapters of the Quran that have exactly 29 verses. These 3 chapters that are around the midpoint of the Quran, chapter 57, are chapters 48, 57, and 81. And the sum of these 3 chapters is 186, a very significant number. The midpoint of the Quran in terms of chapters is chapter 57. And the only 3 chapters of the Quran that have exactly 29 verses are around the midpoint of the Quran in terms of chapters, which is chapter 57. And sum of the chapter numbers of these 3 chapters is 186. And the midpoint of the Quran in terms of verses is also verse 186 of chapter 26. The 2 midpoints of the Quran are complementary. And this is what these 2 midpoints are about. They are about the midpoint of the year, the 19-year metonic cycle of the moon, the earth, moon, sun geometry, the mathematical fabric of the universe and the Quran, and the true nature of reality. Inshallah, we will continue this work in next discussion. God bless you. God bless all of us, and have a nice day.